This is Valley News Live at 5.
We begin with breaking news. The U.S. Capitol is once again a crime scene after police say a man rammed a vehicle into two U.S. Capitol police officers and one of them has died. The suspect was shot and has also died. Skylar Henry is near the Capitol building with the latest.
National Guard troops raced toward the Capitol Friday afternoon, then lined up shoulder to shoulder in a show of force. Law enforcement officials say a car had tried to breach the perimeter of the Capitol, hitting two Capitol Hill police officers and ramming into a barrier.
The suspect did exit the vehicle with a knife in hand, and at that time he started to lunge toward run aggressively toward U.S. Capitol Police Office.
Police shot the driver and emergency crews arrived on the scene. Two stretchers loaded into ambulances. Police say both the driver and one of the police officers have died from their injuries.
It does not appear that he is known to the Capitol Police or the Metropolitan Police Department at this time. It does not appear to be terrorism related, but obviously we'll continue to investigate.
The scene unfolded while Congress was on recess. President Biden had left for Camp David and the White House press secretary was in the middle of a press conference.
I'm obviously not aware, as Kelly acknowledged, of the situation at the Capitol. The President of the United States always travels with a national security rep.
The incident comes 3 months after a mob of armed insurrectionists stormed the U.S. Capitol as Congress was voting to certify Joe Biden's presidential win. Just last week, law enforcement took down fencing around the outermost perimeter of the Capitol complex. Cars, unless they were cleared by authorities, weren't even able to get close to the buildings. Also last week, several lawmakers from both parties pushed for a bill that would remove permanent fencing around the Capitol. Skylar Henry, CBS News, Washington.
Two law enforcement authorities have confirmed to CBS News that the suspect is 25-year-old Noah Green from Indiana. Police believe he was working alone and the threat to the Capitol is over. We're getting a look today at just how close the wildfire got to the Burning Hills Amphitheater in Medora. You can see the charred ground surrounding the area where thousands of people enjoy the Medora musical each year. The National Guard deployed 2 helicopters to help fight the wildfire that prompted the city to evacuate. So far, the fire has scorched an estimated 3,000 acres and is about 50% contained. The Billings County Sheriff's Office says the fire started from a downed power line. It's nice out there, but it's one of those days where you need a hat or a lot of hairspray. Summer is here now to let us know if the wind will die down this evening. Hey, Summer.
Hey, Andrea, I think for you and I, it was definitely maybe a half a can of hairspray or so. Definitely another windy one, and windy and dry enough that we had another fire weather warning, or that red flag warning, throughout today. And that is going to continue for a few more hours until 8 p.m. for all of the red shaded counties. There are a few areas that are excluded from that down across the southeastern part of North Dakota. But we are still looking at very dry conditions. Here's the latest drought monitor that was updated yesterday. Extreme drought for the areas shaded in red out in western North Dakota and much of the region under dry or moderate conditions. And we still have very low humidities tonight, meaning very dry air, and these still gusty winds, gusting to 25 miles per hour at this time in Devil's Lake, 30 miles per hour in Jamestown, and 25 miles per hour in Wadena. But Andrea, a little bit of good news. The wind will be subsiding tonight, still just a little on the breezy side, but I'll have a look ahead towards a much nicer weekend just in a few minutes.
All right, thanks, Summer. 2 more people are now in custody in connection with a shooting that injured a 12-year-old boy in West Fargo. Jamond Walker of Glendon was arrested in Hibbing, Minnesota on aggravated assault charges. Leotis McGee Jr. was arrested today by U.S. Marshals in Minneapolis. He's charged with aggravated assault and reckless endangerment. Both Garrett Morin and Deontay Taylor were arrested and charged with conspiracy to commit aggravated assault last week in connection with the shooting. Police say just before 9 p.m. on Sunday, March 21st, they responded to the 1500 block of 11th Avenue East for a report of a shooting. The shooting was deemed a drive-by. Police initially said it was in retaliation to an incident that happened earlier that day. Morin said he and 3 other people drove from Moorhead to West Fargo to buy marijuana. He told investigators when they drove past the victim's home, the front seat passenger started firing rounds into the home. A 12-year-old boy was hit in the leg. A jury has now found a North Dakota National Air Guardsman guilty of sexually assaulting a subordinate. Eric Clemenson was found guilty of felony sexual imposition and misdemeanor sexual assault. His victim told officers she was assaulted by Clemenson in 2019 after going out with a group of co-workers. He faces up to 10 years in prison. A 28-year-old man is now in jail after fleeing from police during a traffic stop. A Crookston police officer tried to pull over 28-year-old Ruben Silva around 5:30 p.m. yesterday near the intersection of North Main Street and West 3rd Street. But Silva took off, driving the wrong way down Main Street. Police lost him, but found his car a few minutes later, then found him down by the river and arrested him. He's being held on several charges, including contempt of court, drug possession, fleeing, theft, driving after revocation, and DWI. Police are investigating after a woman drove her car into the Red Lake River. Police got the call around 11 this morning after a woman walked into the Crookston Public Library soaking wet, saying she drove her car into the river. Police learned about a car in the river around the same time. Central Park is closed to the public until authorities can fish that car out. Totally unnecessary. That's how the head of the homicide division for the Minneapolis Police Department described Derek Chauvin's actions the day George Floyd died. Chauvin, now fired from the force, has pleaded not guilty to multiple charges, including second-degree unintentional murder. Camila Bernal has more as the opening week of testimony in the trial wraps up.
If your knee is on a person's neck, that can kill him.
The longest serving and most senior member of the Minneapolis Police Department says Derek Chauvin went against training during the arrest of George Floyd.
In all the years you've been working for the Minneapolis Police Department, been trained to kneel on the neck of someone who is handcuffed behind their back in a prone position?
No, I haven't.
What level of force might that be?
That would be the top tier, the deadly force.
Chauvin's knee was on Floyd's neck for more than 9 minutes.
Pulling him down to the ground, face down, and putting your knee on the neck for that amount of time is just uncalled for.
Minneapolis Police Department policy allows a police officer to use whatever means are available to him to protect himself and others, right?
Yes.
Did you see any need for Officer Chauvin to improvise by putting his knee on Mr. Floyd for 9 minutes and 29 seconds?
No, I did not.
Lieutenant Richard Zimmerman testifying officers have a duty to provide life-saving care even before paramedics arrive.
You need to provide medical care for a person that is in distress.
In Minneapolis, I'm Camila Bernal.
During cross-examination, Chauvin's lawyer, Eric Nelson, repeated a point he had made during previous testimony by law enforcement that there are circumstances where an unconscious person can become combative after being revived, and certain situations require improvisation. Clay County is reporting an increase in COVID-19 cases over the last 2 weeks. Becky Schmidt with Public Health says the uptick is a good reminder that although we are steadily vaccinating individuals in our community, there are still many that are not yet immune to this virus. The public is urged to limit the number of people you gather with, continue to social distance, and wear a face mask, and stay home when you're sick, and get tested if you're sick or have been exposed. As North Dakota and Minnesota wrap up their first week of full vaccine eligibility, here's where we stand on the road to herd immunity. Taking a look at some of the counties in our area, nearly half of adults in Cass County have received their first dose of the COVID-19 vaccine, and nearly a third are fully vaccinated. Grand Forks and Polk counties are close behind with 41% partially vaccinated. And after concerns about how many doses they've been allocated, a third of Clay County residents have received their first shot. Good news, if you are fully vaccinated, you can now travel again, according to new guidance just issued by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. The agency says fully vaccinated people do not need to get tested before or after traveling domestically. They also do not need to quarantine after travel. If you want to travel abroad, the CDC says fully vaccinated people do not need to get tested beforehand unless it's required by the other country. However, while they should still get tested and have a negative result before returning to the U.S., they do not need to quarantine. For a list of other spots to get your shot, you can use our VNL vaccine tracker. It's right on the home page of our website. Or you can open your phone camera and point it at the QR code on your screen. Then tap the link that pops up. Rescue crews are doing final sweeps at a deadly train derailment site in eastern Taiwan after a crash that killed 51 people and injured scores of others. Officials say several cars of the passenger train, said to be carrying about 400 people, left the tracks after being hit by an unmanned vehicle that rolled down a hill. Survivors climbed out windows and walked along the train's roof to reach safety. Part of the wreckage is inside a long train tunnel. Many of the victims were said to have been crushed when passenger cars slammed into the sides of the tunnel. As we head into Easter weekend, many churches are offering various options for people to attend or view services. At Lutheran Church of the Cross, you can sit inside the sanctuary, outside on the church lawn, or watch it online. Last year, they were only able to host their services online. The outdoor worship will allow people to spread out while listening to live music and hearing the children's message. No matter how you celebrate, pastors say they're just happy to have everyone back in person.
Really excited to see people who maybe haven't been to church since the pandemic started. And Easter, for many people, is such an important time that they don't want to miss it.
And if you're wondering how communion works in the age of COVID, the church will be offering it, but in pre-filled cups with a seal on top. Still to come on Valley News Live at 5, there might be more jobs out there, but people are still struggling to find the right one.
Temperatures have warmed into the 60s for many and 70s for some. We're still looking at a mild evening ahead with thankfully decreasing winds. And the same thing up in Grand Forks, mild temperatures, decreasing wind and clearing skies. But coming up in just a minute, I'll fill you in on your Easter weekend weather planner right after the break.